Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Walsh, and I'm the advisor for the HBCU-Africa Correspondents Corps. Today, we're here to have a discussion about the rule of law and people-centered justice in preparation for the Democracy Summit 2023. Leading this discussion will be Joshua Edler of the Grambling State University. Joshua will be speaking with Themba Mahleka of New York University about one of the cohorts that's being organized on the sidelines of the Summit for Democracy. Joshua, you have the floor.
Thank you for introducing me, Mr. Walsh. As you said, I'm here to talk with Mr. Themba Mahleka, a senior program officer for the Justice for All Pathfinders for Peaceful, Just, and Inclusive Societies projects at New York University. We are here to talk about his cohort, rule of law and access to justice champions. And thank you for joining us, Mr. Mahleka. I would like to go straight into my first question. Why was your cohort founded, and was there a specific moment in history or legislation that you felt needed to be changed?
First of all, thank you for having me on your, for interviewing me, Michael and Joshua, and to your readers and viewers, it's a good day as well. Just to clarify that I represent the Pathfinders for Peaceful, Just, and Inclusive Societies, which we're part of the New York University Center on International Cooperation. As the Pathfinders, we participate in the rule of law and people-centered justice cohort as civil society co-leads. And so I will be speaking today as in terms of reflecting on our participation in the cohort. The cohort is co-led by the Republic of Kosovo and the Dominican Republic. And so your question, why was the cohort founded, and was there a moment in history or legislation that needed to be changed? Just to say that it was founded in response to the global justice gap and the fact that 5 billion people have unmet justice needs globally, including people who cannot obtain justice for everyday problems, people who are excluded from the opportunity the law provides, and people who live in extreme conditions of injustice. So this requires the participation of actors across sectors to come up with evidence-based innovative solutions that identify the unmet legal needs of people and create diverse channels for diversity and eliminate barriers for people to find the solutions they need. There was no specific moment in history per se, except to say there are several ongoing justice needs that are unmet, as I have articulated, in 5.1 billion people lacking justice. And this is a gap that was estimated in 2019, meaning perhaps with the impact of the pandemic and with the continued issues that are happening globally, it has become even wider. And that is why it is necessary to put people at the center of justice to try and address this justice gap and provide access to justice for all.
So my next question will be about those people. How does the lack of justice affect citizens' willingness to participate in a free government?
It affects their willingness to participate because access to justice creates a platform for trust between people and the governments that serve them, that are meant to serve them. There's a social contract that is in place that governs this relationship between these parties. And when there is no access to justice, there is no trust. And when there's no trust, then citizens cannot participate or enjoy the opportunities that the law provides. And that actually is an underlying and fundamental problem that can spill out into causing of conflict or other issues that may not have originally been justice issues, but that are fed from this lack of trust within a country or a society.
Can you expand on what your cohort has been able to accomplish?
Okay, so far the cohort has been busy and has done quite a lot that we can, report back. For example, more countries, as I said, it's co-led by 2 countries, but more countries have since joined. And as I said, we are civil society co-leads, but more civil society organizations and have also joined to participate in the cohort. This is important because it means there's more gravitas toward the achievement of justice for all. There's more interest, there's more participation. And it's not just, participating in meetings for the sake of it, but there are specific deliverables this cohort hopes to achieve, and we have been working towards that. For example, at the second summit, we intend to launch a joint statement which will be endorsed and underwritten by all those countries that have joined and all those organizations to, amongst other things, put people at the center of justice. And it will also not just be a statement which we believe will be a compelling statement, but will also be supported by commitments by those countries and by those civil society organizations to implement certain programs and certain interventions domestically and internationally that will move the needle forward and reduce the global justice gap. There's also what's something known as the Justice Action Coalition. It's a group of countries and member nations that have come together to advocate for people-centered justice and for SDG 16.3, which is access to justice for all. And the Justice Action Coalition is working towards the second SDG summit, wherein the Justice Action Coalition intends to show progress that has been made towards SDG 16.3. This is a separate but connected process to, when I say separate to the Summit for Democracy, it falls within the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But these are movements that are covering a similar subject matter and ought to therefore be connected. And our cohort has been able to connect the work of the Justice Action Coalition and its agenda with the rule of law and people-centered justice cohort, so that there's consistency in the messaging and in the objectives of these movements that are happening concurrently globally.
Why do you feel like this summit is so important? And who will benefit the most from a successful summit?
The summit is very important, in my opinion, to create political will for generating evidence, data, and exploring innovative solutions and ultimately systemic reform in justice systems. It'll also foster cohesion and collaboration amongst those participating in the summit for a successful summit, in my opinion, will benefit actual everyday people that live in the countries that are participating in the Summit for Democracy. And that's why these commitments are so important, because it's not just a conference or a conversation that may or may not be valuable, but it's underwritten by commitments, meaning there will be actual action, or ought to be actual action, that follows the summit for the benefit of the citizens and everyday people of those countries. It doesn't only have to be citizens, but it can be refugees and other potentially displaced people.
Have you individually spoke to President Biden or Vice President Harris? And if not, who is a political leader you feel like if you got in front of, you could be able to make a difference?
Yeah, so I unfortunately have not had the opportunity to get in or to speak to President Biden or Vice President Harris. However, I would really appreciate an opportunity to interface with the hosts of the second Summit for Democracy, being the United States, Costa Rica, the Netherlands, the Republic of Korea, and Zambia, to call for people-centered justice and the rule of law to have a more central and prominent place within this the space of the summit. And this is again premised on the point I was trying to make earlier, that access to justice is a sort of foundational aspect on which democracy and other rights and can be built upon, and therefore we should put a spotlight on it, and not just access to justice, but people-centered justice. So that is what I would like an opportunity to do. Fortunately, the Netherlands participates in the rule of law and people-centered justice cohort, and we are confident that the work that we're doing will cascade as a result of that leadership.
Have you been able to work alongside any of the other cohorts that will be in attendance? And if not, are there plans to do so in the future?
yes, we have been able to engage with the other cohorts, particularly on that civil society level that I speak of. The civil society participants from majority of the cohorts have come together to put together their own joint statement of what they expect the governments that are participating in the Summit for Democracy to do. And this is still a draft in progress, which will be released during the second summit. And it's a collaboration between, it's an inter-cohort collaboration on the level of civil society organizations. We've also been able to exchange ideas with other members to learn about their experiences in facilitating durable, measurable commitments. And that has been useful in order to try and get as much progress through the summit.
Who can join your cohort, and what does the application process look like?
Okay, so to join the cohort, any country that's a member of the Summit for Democracy is encouraged and welcome to join the cohort, as are civil society organizations who believe that they are or can contribute to the rule of law and people-centered justice in some shape or form. To do so, it would be a process of reaching out to the co-leading countries and making seeking your participation in the court. And of course, as you know, civil society, we can facilitate that introduction to allow interested parties to participate.
What does your cohort hope to accomplish at this year's summit?
At this year's summit, we hope to formalize the commitments that we have put in our joint statement. We hope to launch the joint statement, and finally, we hope to have more countries that are members of the cohort, like the Dominican Republic and the United States and other members. We hope to have some of those countries join the Justice Action Coalition to further strengthen that collaboration. And we hope that that is what will come out of the second summit at the end of this month.
The Biden and Harris administration have been advocates for the advancement of HBCUs. How would you suggest students and student reporters hold them accountable to the promises they made while campaigning for presidency?
Yeah, I think one thing students can do is to document these promises quite clearly, and also to use the power of your collective voice to come together, and so that you can make sort of a louder statement to call for this accountability, and then seek an audience and conversations with congressmen or local authorities to highlight these promises that have been made, and also bolster that with the benefits that would emanate from them, and have that escalated through those channels to get some traction.
Where in the world specifically do you feel like change needs to happen the most that could happen, that is going to be discussed at these summits?
I mean, I'll speak primarily from the justice perspective, and in my opinion, it needs to happen everywhere. There are very few places on earth that are getting this right, and so communities are disproportionately affected by barriers to justice, be it from poverty or legal vulnerability, insufficient knowledge of their rights, and so, or insufficient legal aid, and so this needs to be a widespread issue. As I mentioned, a gap of 5.1 billion people means we can't do it piecemeal. It has to be on a global scale.
Thank you for your answers. The Democracy Summit will be held March 29th to the 30th. Other hosting nations include Costa Rica, the Netherlands, Republic of Korea, and the Republic of Zambia. The summit will be held virtually, then each of these countries will host host each other hybridly in a display of a fairer world round. I would like to thank Themba Mahleka for joining me today and answering these questions. I would also like to thank the Rule of Law and Access to Justice champions for their support throughout this.
And I'd like to echo those thank yous. The Historically Black Colleges and Universities Africa Correspondents Corps seeks to provide student journalists and political scientists who are attending HBCUs with professional development, exposure, and experience that will allow them to realize their full potential as foreign correspondents. I believe that this discussion helped to advance that cause, and I'm very grateful to Joshua Edler of the Grambling State University and Themba Mahleka of New York University for their time and effort in this discussion.
And thank you for having me. I enjoyed this.